Today, as I promised in our last lesson, we're going to look at how to write a good essay. And although this essay can be applied at almost any level, for the purposes of this talk, we're going to assume that it's at a university level. Now, one of the most important things about essay writing is your preparation, your research. At a university level, there are many tools at your disposal, many of them accessible through the internet. So use them. But don't poo-poo the value of books. I mean, books are our lifeblood. And you need to learn at the earliest possible stage how to skim through a book, how to read a book quickly. For example, if we take one of these things, there's a book about a former British Prime Minister. All the exciting information is going to be about 2/3 of the way through the book. So if you have to read this book in, let's say, 1 hour, please don't start at the foreword or the introduction, because that's really just pandering to the brilliance of the writer. It's all pompous rubbish. The actual weight, the information is going to be about 2/3 of the way through the book. This is the same with an academic book, with a novel, in fact, with any form of literary writing. The important bit of information, and in your essay, is going to be about 2/3 of the way through the actual piece. When you're looking for research, you should think seriously about the resources that are available to you on the internet. You've got things like JSTOR, which is all PDF for the most part, so therefore a little bit slow, LexisNexis, ERIC, CQ Researcher, university databases. But also make sure that you're looking at primary as well as secondary sources. The primary sources are very valuable. The secondary sources are equally valuable. It's useful to know what everybody is saying about your particular subject. But make sure you do this quickly. The next thing you need to look at is analysis. Your analysis of why somebody says something. Because everybody has a bias. Everybody has a particular axe to grind. Look carefully at the evidence that is presented for a particular viewpoint. Look at the claims that are made by the author. Identify his argument or her argument and assumptions. Be careful of generalizations, things which are out of date, and non sequiturs. Check also whether or not the logic works. Look particularly for a thing called the logical fallacy. I'm going to speak in a few lessons about a thing called the fallacy of authority. But that equally is important here. Don't accept what somebody says simply because they shout louder. Look at the evidence. The point that I would like to make is the value of what I call the crunch, but some people might call this the thesis. Some people bizarrely might call this the synthesis, if they're following a sort of philosophical approach, where you have thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis. But essentially, the reason I call this the crunch is because it's the weight of your essay. It's the bit that packs the punch. Maybe we should have called it punch rather than crunch. Anyway, that's the bit that you're focusing on. If you don't know what you are going to write in your crunch or your thesis or whatever you want to call it, then really you shouldn't be writing the essay. You need to know before you start writing what your main point, what your main focus is going to be. And finally, before we look at the little film, let me just reiterate, please plan, plan, plan. There is nothing more important than a plan. And a plan can be done in literally 1 minute. All you have to do is focus on your crunch. And then hold back. Make sure you don't say anything about that until you get there. Let's listen to what we had to say about 2 years ago. And first of all, we're going to listen to the wise advice of the turkey. An essay is about a presentation of not only your ideas, but also the ideas you've acquired, which prove that you understand the subject. When we're thinking about the essay, we're particularly thinking about these brief essays which we write in examinations, which are going to last, three-quarters of an hour. But the same principles will also work by extension, simply by expanding what here we're going to refer to as paragraphs. So an essay is made up of a series of units, let's say 5 units. We're going to write them down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we might call these paragraphs. Unit 1 would be the introduction, and Unit 5 would be the conclusion. Units 2 and 3, paragraphs 2 and 3, are those paragraphs where you are going to demonstrate to the reader that you know what you're talking about. These paragraphs need to establish that everything is balanced. So, for example, in an argumentative essay, maybe paragraph 2 would be the reasons for the proposition, and paragraph 3 would be the reasons against the proposition. But there's a certain leeway here. Maybe paragraph 2 would be your main reasons for and your main reasons against, and paragraph 3 would be your subsidiary reasons for and against. Now, there is only one way to write an essay, and that is to plan it. And the plan, the important bit of the plan, is not necessarily about everything that is in the essay. I've seen some plans where people have written so much they might just well have written the essay anyway. The plan is about what you don't say, about what you're not going to say at the beginning. The plan is about getting your main ideas, your best ideas on paper, and then saving them for the crunch. Paragraph 4. Paragraph 4 is where you establish very clearly that maybe some of the points in paragraphs 2 or 3 are not points you agree with. You also maybe add your own special bit of information, and it's that bit of information which is so important, which is so vital to your essay, and which is vital to your getting the good mark at the end. Paragraph 4, the crunch, is probably going to be your longest paragraph. It's going to be the paragraph where you back up your facts with good quotations. It's going to be the paragraph where you present your argument in a clever, logical, ordered way. Each paragraph that you write is a complete idea. We could take a metaphor like Cromwell in the Battle of Naseby, which is just round the corner from where I live. You might hide some of your ideas, but you might hold back your crunch, but you advance with discipline. The paragraphs are the blocks as you develop your essay. You're building up your army like a battlefield. Now, a point about length here, just very quickly. Paragraphs 1 and paragraphs 5 are probably going to be quite brief. Paragraph 1, you establish how you intend to answer the question. Paragraph 5 follows naturally from the crunch. Paragraph 5 is exactly what it says on the bottle. It is the conclusion of all this discussion. If you want to start in paragraph 5 making a new discussion, if you want to start a new idea, you might as well write a new essay. It's a waste of your time to add anything new to paragraph 5. Paragraph 5 concludes what you've been writing. It follows naturally. Paragraph 4 is your argumentative paragraph. Paragraph 4 is what you've been waiting for. Now look, it's exactly like the situation where you get into an argument with one of your friends, or indeed maybe not one of your friends. You want to say, there's no point in going onto the offensive right at the beginning and battering somebody. Ridiculous, childish, silly. You listen very politely to what somebody else has got to say. Oh yes, I understand. And you reason with them how clever your points are, how wise is your position. But paragraph 4, 1, 2, 3 reasons why your position is wrong, and bang! You've flawed them, you've destroyed them, you've established your own point of view very calmly and very brilliantly by conceding that they also had a point of view too, but that it was wrong. We can say something later about how you set out your essay and how, for example, you are going to fulfill the requirements of the MLA system. Let's just recap a few of those points that we made in the film. And the first one, which seems to have caused a lot of problems, is the idea of the introduction. In fact, quite a number of people have written to me since seeing that film to ask me, how do I write an introduction? How do I write the best introduction? I thought this was a very strange question until I looked on the internet to find that there's a lot of people on the internet advising that an introduction should be something that captures the attention of the reader. An introduction should be something that you spend a lot of time and effort thinking about. Well, frankly, in my experience, you don't have that much time or effort, number one. But number two, and this is more important, your average teacher, the person who's generally going to be reading this essay and marking it, can generally survive a few sentences of an introduction. They are not going to fall asleep or lose interest after 2 or 3 sentences. The area where you really need to keep their attention is once the essay has started. You need to pay particular attention to the way that you present your arguments in paragraphs 2 and 3, and particularly in the crunch. So don't get worried about the introduction. Don't try to be George Orwell. If you are, spectacular. But if you are not, please don't worry about trying to say something original. There's not that much that you can say that is truly original. That's point one. Point two, please take the opportunity of using that introduction to fashion your essay in the way that you want it to be read. So if the question is perhaps a little bit vague, by all means use the introduction to make it specific. Set out your stall. Indicate what you intend to do, but do so succinctly. Don't spend too much time on it. The introduction, again, let me repeat, should be brief. And the conclusion, again, let me repeat, should be brief. If you're going to spend a lot of time on either the introduction or the conclusion, really you are wasting time. Your time is best spent on that 4th paragraph on the crunch. There is a view, particularly in France, that the conclusion should hint that there is more to be said. If you want to do this, by all means do, but don't spend too much time on it. If there's more to be said, frankly, I would ask, why haven't you said it? A final point that we might say before we finish this lesson is about language. Now, many of you may have undergone the rigours of the SAT test and you've learnt all these extraordinary words. But be careful. I'm not saying don't use extraordinary words. Extraordinary words are wonderful. But be careful that you really know how to use them and that you're not going to misuse them. There is nothing worse than seeing the misuse of a word like esoteric or excoriate. These words have a perfectly good and valuable meaning. We don't want it to be messed up by somebody who's just showing off. That's the first point here. The second point probably we use to back this up. Because what is better? To have lots of words that nobody understands in your essay, or to explain something which is very complicated in the language that an intelligent 5-year-old or 7-year-old might actually understand? I would always opt for that option. I would always say, please try and write clearly in a way that an intelligent child would understand you. It's much cleverer to be able to explain something complicated in simple language than to make something that is simple seem really complex. You're not working for some strange dictatorial bureaucracy. You're trying to explain something.